Welcome to Demand Gen Confidential, the marketing podcast where we'll be talking with some of the most progressive marketers out there, diving deep into marketing tactics to help you become a better marketer. Let's jump into today's episode. I remember, a year and a half ago, we were at lunch in Zurich, and you mentioned you had gone and done your stuff for the weekend, and that your strategy was to take the train in the opposite direction and then have to run back to do your jogging. Do you still do that?
I do. I've been running a lot lately, actually, a little bit
Okay.
more even. So no, it's good. I mean, I think it's important to challenge yourself a little bit, right? And I think at some point especially if you're running longer distances, you're still kind of running around your own house, your own neighborhood, and it's always the same. So at some point, yeah, you have to go a little bit further, and I think it's always gives you some commitment as well, right? So you have to get back home. So once you start, there's no way to stop it. So it's a good motivation to keep going. But definitely from time to time, I still do that.
Yeah, baking in the discipline. I mean, and especially if you take a route that's not near the train, you can't you can't quit early. Like you basically, like you said, you have to get home.
You have to get home, which is good. It's a nice, it's like a little adventure, right? Trying to get home, but not running, so it's good.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I've been out of running for a long time, and I always tell myself I need to get back into it so that I'm not so out of shape. But hey, here we are. That's
Next
the way we do
next
it.
year maybe.
Yeah. Other things that so when we worked together, you had taken some time to go write a book as well. So among the many other things that you're into, what is the book? And it was with entrepreneurs, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I made it together with my sister. My sister has been an entrepreneur for many years, and
Yeah.
we actually worked together also for a couple of years. Like next to the job, we always had our side projects, and we
Mhm.
actually have written a couple books for customers, which was our business, and it's still my sister's business actually at the current moment. So at some point we felt, okay, let's write our own book, right? And yeah, the beekeeper, right, the previous job, we had the chance to take a month off, do a little sabbatical, and I took that chance to write the book. Took way more than 1 month. I can tell you, it was not done. It was not done after 1 month, but it was good. It was just my own interest, right? So we wanted to learn from yeah, successful entrepreneurs, successful leaders. I mean, we look a lot on LinkedIn and we see all the nice stories and the kind of the success stories, and we wanted to see the other side, right? Like what is it really like? What does it really take? What sacrifices do you really have to put in to make it to that point, right? And so we collected 10 leaders, entrepreneurs, athletes, even interviewed them and wrote their stories in a little book. So it's good, and it's something for us also nice to work together. My sister, something we're proud of, and I think it brought a lot of interesting new insights as well, right? On how it's done.
That's cool. I mean, I'm asking for a friend, and by friend I mean myself. Like, what are some of the top insights of tidbits, or what's one that stood out to you as you did that we should know?
I don't know. For me, it's also like sometimes you have in mind, okay, like a top entrepreneur, top leader is like a certain kind of person. Maybe you have the
Mhm.
stereotype in mind, but what we saw is like it was such a complete mix of people. They all approach it in their own ways, right, to reach that success, and they're all able to do it. I think one of it is that they were all very action driven. So it was
Okay.
not maybe overthinking it forever, but kind of going with it, getting started, and taking that chance. And I think all of them, there were not followers, right? They had their own ID. They were a little bit stubborn as well, right? Within their own vision, like, hey, this is what I believe in, this is what I go
Mhm.
for. I think that's what it takes, right? And of course, all of them, right? For none of them was easy. It was never an easy path, right? They all worked their ass off to get to where they are. But it's interesting, right? They all had completely different personalities. Like some of them had PhDs and others didn't even finish high school. But with having kind of that same mindset, they were all able to get there in their own way. And I think that was pretty cool to see.
Yeah, that's interesting. I like the action piece because there's always the quote of like when people talk about starting something, they always say like the best time to start was 5 years ago. The next best time to start is today. And it was just kind of thinking, just get started and do something.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, some their first idea was the right thing to do, but for many of them, yeah, they've been trying a couple things, right? That they learned as they go,
Yeah.
as they went, and they figured it out like that. And yeah, they were all tough people, I have to say. They all pushed through, and they all had their setbacks to where they got there. But it's inspiring to hear from them.
Yeah, that's great. Well, why don't we do some introductions? So I'm here with Guido. I don't actually pronounce your name correctly. I think it's Guido, but I'm not Dutch myself, so I struggle with it. And he is a full stack demand gen marketer. He's managed sales teams, been on marketing teams, like I said, an author, and just a great person to hang out with. Guido, why don't you introduce yourself? What else should the audience know about you?
Good question. I think you gave a good introduction. Thanks for that. No, in general, I love everything marketing and sales. I love getting results with the teams. I love getting the most out of a marketing team. I really enjoy that. And in general, I like, yeah, as you said before, you asked me about the running. I like challenging myself, doing new things. Very focused on learning new things. That's kind of what I care about the most. And fun fact, we've been working closely together in a very similar role,
Yeah.
setting up global campaigns together. So that's how we met. So we go back.
Yeah, and you're in EMEA, and I always thought as we were doing our campaigns initially, like 4 or 5 years ago, like you were the campaign's kindred spirit on the other side of the pond, helping build business, and so it was always a lot of fun.
It was.
But let's take a step back to that time and get a little bit of your take on campaigns. I know you have some pretty strong opinions about how to build them, how to make them successful. But I think the biggest thing when launching anything is how do you get noticed and stand out? And maybe we start there with generating campaigns and like thinking about how are you going to stand out? And especially now with it just being so crowded.
I mean, what you want to do, and it's a good question. Like, what you want to do is you don't want to be generic, right? You don't want to be have superficial messaging, have generic messaging. The goal is to get highly relevant. And I think sometimes a mistake that many marketers make, they start right away. Okay, what channels are we going to use? What tactics are we using? Right, which is tempting because that's fun, right? It's fun to figure that out, and as a marketer, that's where you can kind of get creative. But I think it's very important to choose your focus first, right? And what that means is start with targeting. Start figuring out who are you actually targeting, right? So whether you're account based at your company, right, and you have a list of accounts that you want to reach out to, or you're more persona based, right? There's a certain persona you want to reach or a certain industry. That's okay, but figure that out first, right? Don't try to reach out to everybody with similar messaging and a similar offering, but really choose your segment, right? So don't say we're targeting all of manufacturing because it's huge, but drill it down, right? Look to the sub industries, look at certain regions, figure out, okay, where do we have the best chances of success? Maybe there are past or current customers within that region, right, that you can leverage, or maybe there's certain industries where there's a lot of changes happening, or sub industries where a lot of changes are happening, so you can drive much more urgency in a very specific sub segment. And look, you can have great channels, great tactics, but if your targeting is off, I think you are going to have a very difficult time to be successful with these kind of campaigns. That's my big opinion. And what that means is also to maybe before you start, take one step back, identify these audiences, right? Do a bit more deeper research, try to have deeper understanding of them, figure out what they really care about, what are their daily struggles, right? What are you really solving for them? Before you go out there and start messaging to them in a more generic way, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I want to touch on kind of the like I think of it I always think of it as like point of view, having like a point of view of how people should do it, but then also the customer portion that you said, like, do you already have customers in that segment doing things and kind of leaning into that? Like, how do you think about choosing, a specific audience or target and, the impact or the customers that are already there?
I mean, if you already have customers in a certain segment, right, it's a very strong indicator that there's a strong need within that segment and that you're actually solving something for them, right? Especially if like your usage of the product is very strong with those customers. Sometimes you
Mhm.
get customers and the usage is very low, be careful then, but especially if like the daily, weekly usage is very good. It can be a strong indicator that there's much more potential in that segment to go after. And second, of course, right, in the end, it's about trust. And most people don't want to be the first. They rather be the second or maybe the fifth or the sixth. And if they see, of course, if companies like them are already doing it, they're being successful with it, it's a much smaller step, right, to get started with your product as well. So that's what I would go for. And yeah, in the end, like I said, right, it's not your goal to find the most difficult audience. Your goal is to generate revenue fast and probably in the easiest and cheapest way possible, right? That's what you want to do as a marketing and sales team, and no need to make your life even more difficult than it already is, right?
Yeah, I mean, and especially now with I mean, profitability is the name of the game, so it is as fast and as cheap as you can do it. I mean,
Exactly.
obviously with some parameters of, you don't want the everybody churning right away as well. Like, I mean, there's obviously some guardrails in that. I mean, so you've got the targeting set, and now here's the fun part: is what channels are we gonna go after? Because that's where we always like to spend a lot of time. It's like paid social or email or BDRs. Like, how do you think about like the actual campaign build once you have some kind of narrow specificity?
Yeah. It depends a bit of where your audience is, right? So if it's an audience that's completely new to your product, of course you got to include some more awareness channels and kind of build that trust around them, right? Before you go into more pipeline generating channels.
Yeah,
If they're a bit more known, of course, already, you can drive more direct channels. Maybe if there's strong awareness, okay, you can just have your sales team reach out right away with a strong outbound campaign to capture that demand, for instance, or of course drive Google ads or LinkedIn ads and something like that. Um, yeah, but it's hard for me to maybe answer because it really depends on what
yeah.
exactly you want to do, right?
So it's thinking where your audience is, not the channel first, is really the summary there.
Exactly. And I'm a big believer in multi-channel, right? Using multiple channels together just to increase your reach, increase the chances that they engage with your brand, and in general, right? If you're visible in multiple channels, it increases brand recognition, brand trust a lot. So that's important. That being said, I like being pragmatic, right? You don't need 10 channels that are fully optimized. You're not going to be
Yeah,
able to do it, right? If you got two, three channels that are strong performing channels, it can be a very strong campaign, right? There's
yeah,
no need for any more fancy stuff. If in your core you're targeting the right accounts, the right people with some relevant messaging, and you pick those key channels, it can be super powerful, right? It can be as easy as I don't know, setting up a direct mailer campaign, sending it to all C levels, and having sales follow up. If you have a strong setup in that, it can be enough to generate lots of pipeline. But yeah,
yeah. That's a good point because, like, I mean, multi-channel or omni-channel or integrated campaigns, like whatever you want to call it, is the name of the game in marketing literature. But to your point, if you're trying to do 10 channels, you can't optimize them all. And so while multi-channel is the right way to go, it really only needs to be a few of, targeted optimized channels, I think. So it's like this happy medium.
exactly. Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned in there is figuring out kind of like, if an audience doesn't know about you, some awareness spend or awareness portion of the campaign plus direct pipeline, generating, direct response portion. What is your kind of like philosophy on building up that, like allocating your budget across those things? We've talked about this before, but it's like how much budget should you put in each of those to kind of drive that? I mean, just high level your philosophy on that.
You mean like awareness versus like
Yeah,
pipeline
yeah.
general
So
in general?
so like direct response, like low funnel pipeline generating versus, brand awareness spend. Like people would call it brand awareness spend, but you know, less direct attribution spend.
It depends a little bit, right? So in my opinion, so how can I explain it? Like at the current moment, right? A lot of B2B marketing teams, their budgets are under pressure. So you have
Yeah.
to be careful with where you spend the money, and you want to see some results from the channels you choose. So there's some like very bottom of funnel channels that I I wouldn't pause, right? So there's, I don't know, if you're good, let's say your Google ads campaign is running very efficiently, you're getting good opportunities or MQLs from that, keep it running, right?
Yeah.
It's a good thing to do. Although, I mean, a lot of campaigns are not running efficiently, and then you might wanna double check that. But on the other hand, in my opinion, and it has to do with measurement as well and how things are measured within especially B2B companies.
Hmm.
It's very, very revenue driven, which it should be. I think that's important to do. But sometimes there's a lot of things that don't get measured that are still very important, right? And still actually have a big impact on your marketing efficiency. And I think a lot of B2B companies are heavily underspending on more the awareness side.
Interesting.
Um, and I get it. I get it because it's a scary thing to do, right? And a lot of companies, they don't have that full attribution model or measurement set up, so it feels like just throwing money in in a hole and hoping that something happens, right?
Yeah.
Um, but then again, right, in order to build trust around your brand, in order to make sure, okay, once let's say your sales rep reaches out to these accounts that they already know you a little bit, it can really kind of boost investing in that awareness channel in awareness channels can really boost kind of conversion rates across the whole funnel. And I think it's a bit of a long answer, but I think yeah, if you want an exact number, I think it's always checking about okay, where do you stand in the market? Are you completely new? How big is the market? How do you split your budgets? But I think I don't know, having let's say 30-40% more allocated to more towards brand and awareness
Hmm.
is is not a crazy number, in my opinion. And it's also I think important in this to look at your marketing campaigns, also your marketing department. Of course, it's tempting to look at it channel by channel and start comparing, I don't know,
Hmm.
LinkedIn with with Google Ads or something like that. But it's not the same. Different channels don't have the same goal. You need to understand what the goals are of each channel, and if you can measure it, look at it from a holistic perspective, right? So as a whole marketing department or a whole campaign, let's say you use some awareness activities and some more pipeline generating activities. In the end, I think you put those costs together and you're going to look at the campaign. Okay, what's the cost per opportunity or cost per MQL or cost per whatever you measure, right?
Yeah.
For this whole campaign, and then see what makes sense. Because yeah, looking too closely at that just makes you risk missing out on a lot of opportunities to actually reach your audience in a very relevant way.
Yeah, it's a really difficult dance because the that awareness spend, like, I mean, you can see correlations, and I don't know if there's causation in it, but where you put a bunch of awareness spend and then sales deal cycles accelerate, and they have some of the best quarters they've ever had. But I mean, that awareness spend, and I struggle calling it awareness because a lot of times people call it brand awareness campaigns because there is no goal and they don't really understand it. But that set of activities in marketing is what buries all marketers, I think. I think that's ultimately what ends up causing them to struggle, is articulating that part of the program and everything else, because the direct response is easy. Like,
Exactly.
book demo off Google Ads, like, that's easy.
Exactly. And especially in very sales driven organizations, which I
Yeah.
mean, most B2B software companies are, let's be honest, right?
Yep.
Um, the focus is also a little bit short term, right? It's about what has impact this quarter. And it matters. Of course, it matters, right? We need to
Yeah.
hit this quarter as well. But I think it's also marketing's job to be a champion of the long term effects of marketing as well, right? So if you invest in those kind of awareness channels, right? Where are we going to stand next year, right? Because one day, otherwise, you wake up and you think, hey, we don't have a brand and our competitor has, right? And then
Yeah.
it's too late. Then it's too late.
Yeah, and it's like you almost have to do the direct response portion first and build the trust there, and then you can kind of start to have access to, preaching the awareness play and all of that.
Exactly. Exactly.
I think is kind of like the stepping stone there, as you're alluding to. And then ROI measurement, how should people think about their measurement and ROI in running campaigns and breaking down awareness and pipeline gen and all of that?
It's an interesting question, right? And Look, I talk to a lot of B2B marketers, and I think every B2B marketer wants like a perfect attribution model. Everything, every little engagement is measured, it's
Yeah.
scored in the accounts and leads, and we know exactly what drove, I don't know, winning a deal, right?
Yep.
Um, some companies are there, right? They're doing a really good job, but it's a very small percentage of companies. Most have big gaps in their measurement across the funnel, and I think that's okay, right? It doesn't mean you cannot make good decisions if you don't have the full data, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, in general here, I would also say like if you're not there yet, right? It's okay. I think it's good to be pragmatic, and I think the first step is what you mentioned, right? Sometimes we call a campaign brand awareness because we don't actually know what we want to achieve with it, right?
Yeah.
So the first step there is just think logically. Okay, what do we actually want to achieve with this channel, with this tactic, with this campaign? Have that logic clear, right? And work from that. And even if you cannot perfectly measure it, still, yeah, give you something to reflect after the campaign. Like, did we achieve this goal? Yes or no? And I think that's a good starting point. And yeah, I think that's an important thing. That being said, I like to measure a lot on things like cost per opportunity. You still want to know holistically overall if you put money into marketing, and marketing is not cheap, right?
Yeah.
Um, what are you getting out of this, right? And in the end, we want to get, of course, revenue out of it. That's the goal. But usually, marketing teams obviously are measured in pipeline or opportunities or SQLs. So if we put in $1 here, how many SQLs are we going to get in the end, right? And it doesn't have to be always fully per channel, but at least if we have it per campaign or measured in that way, right? Even if it combines different channels, I think that's already a big step forward, right? To have that insight. So that's in general how I would approach it. And yeah, and of course, the more if you have more measurement available, I think it's very good, right?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I agree. Like, I like the cost per op piece. I like doing general buckets, and then, but you can't do that. Like, to your point, measuring all individual things, you do have to have an understanding of all the individual things and how they play, so that you can answer to execs like, why did cost per op go up, or
Yeah,
why did it go down? You got to be able to articulate the good as well as the undesirable outcomes.
ex- exactly. I think that's a very good point. And it's look, your other internal stakeholders, they won't have that insight in all the little details of the data, anyways, right? And that's also not what they usually care about. You just need to know, okay, is it going right? Are we achieving what we want to achieve? If
Yeah.
not, what is causing it, and what actions are we going to take to improve it, right? And sometimes not having perfect data is still enough to answer those kind of questions.
Yeah, and I mean, and they don't need to. It's not their job to be in the weeds all the time, but you have to build
Yeah,
that trust to be for them to know that you're in the weeds and
yeah,
completely understand what's going on in the business. I mean, you talked a lot about most B2B SaaS companies are sales driven, this quarter, that quarter. And I haven't worked on a sales or marketing team that has, been always very happy with each other. And you have a little bit of a competitive advantage because you've sat on both sides. What should marketers be doing to create better relationships with their sales teams and leaders and sales leaders?
yeah. I think there's a couple of things, right? I think the first thing is the realization, like in marketing, you're there to drive revenue, even though there's maybe awareness campaigns you're running and other
Mhm.
activities you're doing. But at the end of the day, the goal is to drive revenue, both in this quarter and both on the long term, right? I think having that in the back of your mind is very important, right? Especially when you talk to sales, because they, of course, they are very close to the result. If the
Mhm.
result is not there, they feel the pain right away. We, like as marketers, we don't feel that pain, but I think it's important to recognize that, right? That they feel it right away. They have instant feedback for every decision that they make.
Yeah.
And I think, yeah, second there, like if you set up a marketing campaign, don't do it in isolation, right? Especially in B2B, it's even the term marketing campaign is maybe even the wrong term, right? It should always
Yeah.
be marketing and sales should set up campaigns together, right? And marketing can still be in the lead because, of course, usually they're more experienced, more skills with skilled with setting campaigns up like that, obviously. But include sales early on, right? Talk to the sales leaders, get their buy-in for new campaigns, ask them who in the team can actively support, be part of the project team, to both drive insights from the audience, but also see, okay, how are we going to implement this on the sales side, right? We can from the marketing side decide, okay, we're going to do an outbound campaign, but if there's no buy-in, your whole campaign fails, right? And the same if you do a lead generation campaign, like in the end, you need to know that sales is going to follow up on that and do the right thing. And yeah, it only works if you work together and get the buy-in from the start.
Yeah, I really like what you said that maybe we shouldn't even call them marketing campaigns because everybody kind of needs to be involved. And yeah, I think that's a good, just a good call out of getting your sales counterparts involved early on.
Exactly. And especially like a lot of companies are moving to a more account-based approach, right? Where marketing
Mhm.
sales are working very closely on a set list of accounts. I mean, the times of working in isolation are over, right? You need to work together very closely.
Yeah. And like, what is it like sitting inside the sales org having been in marketing? So you're sitting in the sales marketing org and then you're sitting in the sales org. Like what's that environment like?
I, personally, like for me personally, I like it, right? I'm a very results-driven person, and I like the mindset within sales, right? Like you either close the deal or not. There's
Yeah.
not much hiding. So I think for me that's a very very good experience, and really also start to understand, okay, what now really drives revenue, what really drives results, right? And having that experience on the sales side give you just helps you build that instinct a little bit and helps you give you that feeling like, okay, what's gonna really gonna help my colleagues in the on the sales teams. So I think that's really good. Um, but it's yeah, it's important, and also the other way around, right? Being going back from sales to marketing again,
Mhm.
you can also see that, like I said, sales is a bit more short-term focused, of course, focused on the current quarter. And there are a lot of activities, right, that marketing is doing that might not have direct impact, but have a big impact on the long term. And that can feel very, very abstract for most sales teams. And I think why why is this happening? But I
Mhm.
think, yeah, kind of trying to bring that understanding to the sales team as well. Like, hey, this is why it works, this is why it's needed, and try to explain that can help a lot, right? To yeah, to also get marketing and sales together on the same page.
Yeah, I always like I partially think of, sometimes positioning work is, can be seen, positioning and messaging work can be seen as longer term, but really a lot of that sets you up as just being, different and standing out in the marketplace, like drawing it all the way back to the campaigns. And it might feel long term and not immediate, but ultimately if you're not different, I mean, it's one of the books I have behind me, the 22 immutable laws of marketing. Law number one is be first, and rule number two is if you can't be first, be different.
Exactly.
Kind of a thing. So yeah, I think that's it's a big balancing act there. One of the other pieces is in a sales driven org with B2B, in B2B tech, a lot of times marketing doesn't always have the same voice at the table. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But how do you create a situation where you as a marketer can hold the sales team accountable? And I mean, obviously they're going to hold you accountable as well. I mean, marketing does get held accountable, and sales does too, like in their own organization. But as teams work together, having that kind of accountability. And I kind of want to touch on the concept of expected ops in that as well. So like holding them accountable, maybe there's some, communication style stuff, but then there's maybe some metrics driven stuff that you can do.
Yes, it's a very good question. In general, I believe in very clear agreements, but also based on the data. So you can like make very very clear what is expected from both marketing and sales. And
Hmm.
one way to do that, and you don't always need fancy tools for that. An Excel sheet can be enough. Is to start even for marketing to know, okay, if we have a revenue goal, let's say this quarter we want to get a million new ARR. What does that mean for marketing? And marketing
Hmm.
needs to know that in detail, right? So if we look at historical conversion rates, right, within this region, for instance, right, what kind of pipeline is that needed, right? A lot of teams they don't know, right? I think that's very important. It's a simple thing. It seems like a simple thing, but a lot of teams simply don't know, right? So I think that's where you start, right? And also start calculating it back. Okay, what does that mean, right? So how many MQLs do we need? How many leads do we need? And really having those numbers ready for the whole team, right? And for the whole team to know, okay, what, and for each individual to also know, like, what does that mean for me, right?
Hmm.
So we want to get 1 million. Okay, maybe we have a 20% conversion rate from pipeline to closed one, right? So we want 5 million pipeline. What does that mean for each of the individual teams, right? What do they need, or individual persons, what do they need to contribute in order to make this? And also the other way around, right? Sales also makes a commitment. Okay, if you bring me 5 million in pipeline, right? Of course, it's their job to make that work, right? And start closing it.
Yeah.
And that's very important. And yeah, one thing related to that, and you mentioned like expected opportunities.
Yeah.
Also, yeah, one challenge is usually kind of the handover, right? So the classic is, okay, marketing creates lots of MQLs, and they say, hey, we bring you all these MQLs, but you're not turning them into pipeline or not turning them into opportunities, right?
Yeah.
On the other hand, you get sales, and they say, well, the MQLs are not good, right? They're not good enough. We don't get enough. It's the classic discussion, right? That
Yeah.
you always get.
Age old.
Exactly. And I think the way, or a way to deal with that is again to forecast that in a better way and have a clear handover metric for this, right? Kind of a shared metric, yeah, for clear handover between marketing and sales. And what you, for instance, could do is, right, don't just measure on MQLs. I believe MQLs as a metric is a little bit too superficial because it still can mean anything, right? Like
Yeah.
a demo request, very high value MQL, right? But sometimes a white paper download that clicked on a few nurturing emails can be a very good one, but usually it's lower, still lower than a demo request, right? So what you want to do is to keep it easy, right? Kind of slice your MQLs, see, okay, put them in different categories,
Hmm.
look at the historical conversion rates for these different categories. So you want to be realistic and kind of based on those conversion rates, start calculating, okay, based on the type of MQLs that have been delivered by marketing, this is the number of expected opportunities that you should be getting with this.
Yeah.
And then it creates accountability for your BDR team or for your sales team to also make sure, okay, they do the proper follow-up and they try to hit that expected opportunity number, right? If they overachieve, great. But yeah, the actual opportunity number can be something that's not fully in control of marketing, right? And whenever there's a bit of a sense for we cannot fully control this, usually people start kind of stepping back and not taking that full accountability for it. And I think that's a big risk, right? Because that's also the point where marketing sales teams stop kind of working together but start kind of drifting apart. And you want to be very careful with that. But yeah, kind of summarize, right? Just know your numbers, know as a marketing team what does sales need, what does it mean for us, what does it mean for the individual, and forecast based on the type of MQLs you get. What does it mean? How many expected opportunities we can get from that? I think that's already a very great starting point. And yeah, with this all, of course, you need to buy in from the leadership to actually make sure this happens and it gets carried by the organization. But that's another point.
Yeah. I really like the concept of not even just breaking your MQLs or your leads, however you want to do it, in demo requests versus all other, but in specific categories, and then conversion rates with those categories. So then you can communicate with the sales team, like, we're going to do this activity. And yes, you're going to get a lot of volume, but think of it as like outbound. And this is roughly the amount of ops that we should be getting out of this. And then you're like already communicating to them the quality. And you can even layer on, like, there's the intent portion of that. Like you mentioned, like white papers, down, demos, blah, blah, blah. But you can also put in the firmographic stuff as well. So now you're layering on ICP, and so now you've got this clear framework that you're working with the team, of the different activities and the different expectations based on activities. Like, not everything should be 50% conversion rates.
Exactly. And it gets the marketing team closer to influencing revenue, right? And,
Yeah.
and feeling accountability for that. And at the same time, it gives also better understanding for the sales team, right? So it's not always more leads or more inquiries is better, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes there can be a bit of fear, like once you start optimizing for a certain type of MQLs, it can be that the number of MQLs drops. And the first response for a sales team is like, hey, we get less, therefore this is bad. But if you can explain it like this, right, and agree on that, you can be much more strategic in how you how you do demand generation and marketing, right? And it aligns the organization much better.
Yeah, I really like that. Okay, so we've got our campaigns we're running. We've got sales enablement. Now I want to shift gears entirely and go with some offline marketing, which is a little bit of what you're doing now. But I'm gonna take a little segue into a ridiculous thing that I did a couple years ago in buying a billboard. I actually ended up buying two billboards to run an offline marketing campaign because my theory was that if I could stick a billboard in front of a food manufacturing plant, they would see it every time they went in and we could have sales outbounding. Now, of the two that we put up, we got an opportunity out of one of them, but I'd call it a failure because they said they never saw the billboard. It's a really difficult thing to incorporate, and there's all sorts of other offline stuff in there. But I want to talk about, at least get your opinion first off of how should marketers start, how can marketers think about offline marketing like they do digital marketing? Like what kind of opinions do you have on that?
I mean, it's related to two things I mentioned earlier, right?
Yeah.
I think in the first place, right, to take one step back, I, I strongly believe it's important to test new things as a marketer, right?
Mm,
You want to be, you mentioned before, right? If you can't be first, you want to be different. And
yeah.
within marketing as well, right? If you're doing exactly the same as everybody else is doing, well, at some point, let's say with digital, it starts getting very expensive, right? It starts getting more competitive, and
Yeah.
it's only going to get more expensive, right? And as a marketer, you always want to kind of think one step ahead. Okay, what's the next thing? How are we going to stand out? How are we going to stand out with our audience, right? And do something new. So I think that's important. How that's related to also to digital and something else I said before, right? It's about targeting. Look, I strongly believe the better you can target, the higher your chances of success are going to be of your campaign, right? And
Hmm.
that's of course one of the trends of being account based, to be highly specific on certain accounts is one of the things in that, right? The whole marketing sector knows this, and they're always trying to get more specific. And the same is what we're trying to do with offline as well. So um, look, it's seen as a channel that's very broad, and you kind of target the whole country or whole city.
Yeah.
Um, but what we're trying to do, right, with the new business that we're starting at the moment is to get that targeting very specific, right? So we take an account list, we put it in our tool, it runs through the algorithm, we combine it with different data sources,
Hmm.
and what we do is identify, first of all, we identify maybe not just one account. It can be the way, but usually we try to find account hubs.
Yeah.
So you have like a business park or in the industrial area where lots of your target accounts are closely located to each other. The chances of seeing it becomes much higher.
Yeah.
And, and we also match it with data to identify the movement paths around those accounts, right? So they might come by car, which is a bit more in the US, right?
Yeah.
In Europe, a lot of them more come by public transport as well, right? So you
Yeah.
have some stations nearby. There might be a very popular lunch spot for employees at a company, popular restaurants, hotels sometimes where they're staying. And based on that, you can kind of map out the best places to be visible, right? And
Yeah.
increase and maximize the chances to be seen. And in general, like you do with LinkedIn, right? You let's say with LinkedIn ads, you also don't show the ad just one time. You try to be visible in different places multiple times. But yeah, if you can reach multiple accounts at once, again, it becomes much more efficient, right? You can use multiple billboards in location and um, become much more efficient with how you do these kind of campaigns without spending big budgets. You can start quite small with this already.
Yeah. I mean, that's like the biggest issue with offline is the targeting, is just it's the amount of waste in targeting that you're trying to avoid. And it's interesting getting movement patterns of people around accounts and things like that that make getting that targeting a lot better.
Exactly, and of course, right? It's in the real world, so also people who might not be your target audience will see it. But I think the way to look at it is also kind of at cost per opportunity. In the
Yeah.
end, you put the money in, and you want to and you want to get some money out of it in the end, right? I think that's the way to look at it. And even if there is some waste, or how you call it, it can be very much okay if you still get those opportunities out of it, right? At a very good price. And yeah, currently a lot of companies, right, especially when they're targeting bigger accounts or enterprise accounts, it's not uncommon to pay a couple thousand for an opportunity in these
Yeah.
kind of accounts, right? And it's time to start thinking a little bit different. Okay, how can we lower that, right? What could be other ways to bring down that cost per opportunity? Because yeah, on the long term, it's not a sustainable model to keep running.
Yeah, and so when you're thinking about offline, is it, the patterns of where people are at? Is it mainly billboards are the channel, or are there other channels that you're doing as well in offline or different tactics? I don't know how you want to claim talk about it.
It can be billboards, it can be digital screens, which is
Okay.
actually almost like it's like they're programmatic screens, so you almost use them like you would use digital ads.
Hmm.
There's also a lot of more guerrilla type activities that we do, right? So
Okay.
basically, in every location, I don't know, we can have trucks with a billboard driving around if you want to, right? If it makes sense. We're doing a lot like kind of chalk stencils on the floors to kind of catch people in a more creative way. Think also about like, let's say if you identified a good hub to have like a branded coffee stand, for instance, right? If you found that prime location, it can also be a great way to engage with the audience, or even like a branded ice cream stand. Now it's still a little bit cold, but summer is coming soon, so it could be a great way to engage with the audience. But in the end, right, it's all about, of course, you want to get creative and use that creativity to get results. Yeah, but like you said, in the end, it's about targeting and finding the right locations for that.
Yeah.
Then as a second step, you think about, okay, what's then the best asset or the best creative I'm going to use to engage my audience with this campaign. And yeah, and in general, what we do is here with offline, we always try to make it multi-channel as well, right? So a great way to do is, let's say, okay, you have a certain account hub.
Hmm.
For month one, you start with your online advertising. Month two, you run your offline campaign, right?
Hmm.
Simultaneously with your SDR outreach, who are then going to come in warm. You know, the 2-3 months after, you keep running that with your SDRs, with your LinkedIn campaign to, yeah, to kind of leverage existing channels as well, right? As well as leveraging a completely new channel. Yeah, that's both can drive pipeline as well, boost conversion rates across the funnel, but also you build a lot of trust for your brand, right? Because there's something special about seeing it in the real world
Yeah.
versus an ad on LinkedIn or on Google.
Yeah, and I think back to like when we started this conversation, talk about awareness and like how to measure that portion of it. Like some of this, you probably have to get kind of scientific in measurement in seeing like, split tests of uplift in different audiences. So you take, a certain audience, two different audiences, did all of this uplift one setup. Like might be how you're starting to think about measurement.
Exactly, right. And it depends a bit per country what you can measure. Like in the
Yeah.
EU, it's always a bit more complicated to do with
Yeah,
strict
yeah.
rules. No, but exactly, like for instance, branded search uplift within a certain zip code or certain specific area
Yeah.
is a very clear metric of the effect of a campaign like this, right? And also, of course, if you're using HubSpot, you can also see if you have your account list set up, you
Yeah.
can start seeing which accounts are start engaging within a certain area, right? Which is a very, very strong indicator of yeah, of the impact of the campaign. Yeah, and within the US, you can always go one step further, right? You can work with things like a mobile advertising ID,
Yeah.
where you can actually start matching foot traffic that walks past your campaign or drives past your campaign. Start matching it, for instance, with LinkedIn data, and really uh, start really detailed insights of what your
Mm.
campaign is actually doing, right? So it's getting more and more advanced. It's an old school channel in the minds of a lot of people, but it's really, yeah, a lot of opportunities are coming here at the moment.
Interesting. I mean, on the branded search uplift, that's an interesting one because pre-internet, and so this isn't as relevant branded search, but that's how a lot of advertising worked. It was like, we're going to advertise in this city and let's see if sales go up, and then we'll say whether it worked or not. And it was this like causation correlation piece. And then only when you started getting all the automation tools and digital tracking and everything did, I think, a lot of stuff move away from that
Yeah,
style. And I think cookieless, all the EU GDPR regulations, all of that is going to shove a little bit further back to that uplift piece like you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And also the truth is, right, there's also a lot of industries, like more traditional industries like manufacturing or construction.
Yeah.
They're still, to this day, they're just hard to reach with digital, right? And they don't always make decisions based on what they see they see on LinkedIn ad, right? The decision making process is different there, right? And having a more, sometimes a bit more traditional channel that's much more trustworthy, right, can really drive deals over the finish line.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this mobile tracking IDs, I'm gonna have to look into that because I don't know, are you guys building in the US as well? Doing that, or are you just building in EMEA?
Technically, yes, we operate there as well, but we're much more focused on EMEA.
Yeah,
We're much more
okay.
focused on EMEA at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Because that mobile tracking and linking it to LinkedIn is super interesting. So,
I mean, it's pretty cool what you can do. There's a lot you can do. There's a lot you can do there.
okay, that's good. Well, yeah, that's I'm intrigued for sure. I mean, I think offline is an option, especially to hit the second law, immutable law marketing, and that's really great. Well, Guido, anything else you want to add to any of the things that we talked about that the audience should
No,
know?
I think it's good, right? Like I said, and also talking about offline, in my opinion, it like we talked a lot about measurement and also the things we can't measure. I think
Yeah,
that's kind of a theme here, and I think, of course, get the measurement you can, try to get it as accurate as you can. I think that's definitely a good goal. But also don't forget, right? You're in marketing. It's also your job to do things that stand out, do things that
yeah,
are creative. And marketing, we want to make it an exact science, but it's not always it, right? So I think it's important to get creative with it, try new things, learn from it, right? I think that's the way to truly stand out as with your product, with your brand. And I think it's a big missing link within B2B marketing at the moment.
where would you like to direct people to connect with you or follow up on anything that we talked about today?
Yeah, in general, look, I'm always super happy to connect with other marketers to learn more from them as well, right? And to share insights. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. You can look me up. I think my name will be somewhere, I guess, visible for this podcast.
Yep, and we'll
And
link
in
his
general, right?
LinkedIn.
Yeah. And in general, right? Holty.com, HOOLTY.com. Check it out. We're still in the early stages, but we're always eager to connect with marketers that try to do something more creative, try to do something more innovative, and try to, yeah, co-create a high impact campaign together. So something, if you're up for that, always happy to talk and discuss that.
Yeah, and if you're hitting AI and then hitting, offline marketing with Hulti, you're probably one of the most progressive marketers out there. You're probably in the top 1% moving off of traditional channels. So that's cool. Well, thanks a lot, Guido. I appreciate the time and it's always great catching up. And we'll leave it at that for today.
Cool. Thank you very much. I enjoyed the conversation.
Thank you.